Today we're talking about the Turbodraft. No. Alright, we're going over to Turbodraft. Why are you laughing at me? They suck. Suck. This is no different than a TikTok and they think it's funny. I ain't never used the Turbodraft. This will be the first time. It came on this here tanker that we acquired. It came with all sorts of goodies, and this is one of them. Retails for about $4,000. And we're going to give it a shot. The idea is to run a 2.5 supply line and a 5-inch supply line, and it uses a Venturi effect, kind of like a jet siphon, right back to the pump. So we're going to try it today, and it'll be the first time. I read the instructions manual. It said to run the pump discharge pressure at 175. So I don't know if you have to consider friction loss or not. We're going to find out. It doesn't say anything about it. Alright, we have one screen on this Turbodraft. Inside, that's where your 2.5 comes out. And it goes into that pipe. So all the water fills in here. The high pressure water goes through, drawing the other water in with it. There's the end. Just an opening. There is no screen on the other side. One-sided. So, if you're trying to run this out of like a muddy pond, you're going to leave this screen side up. With doing this, you need about 13, 14 inches of water, which will get you about to the top of that handle. And then you'll need something to hook onto that handle to break your whirlpool. Otherwise you'll suck air. It won't work. If you have a clean rocky bottom and you're not worried about sucking any mud into that screen, you can run this face down. The handle's designed to hold it off the bottom. And then you only need about 4 inches of water. This is more for creeks where the water's moving. But if you can find a rocky bottomed pond, then it would work also. So that's that. If your screen plugs up, all we have to do is shut our supply off, our intake. Leave your discharge run, shut the intake down, so close your piston intake valve or master intake valve, which will stop any more water from going through, and it will build up pressure right in the box, pushing out to get rid of debris. So that's that. We'll go give it a shot. You're going to need water. We're going to pump it right off the tanker here. We have a flow meter. We're going to see how much flow we're getting. It takes about 200 gallons per minute to run that. So I'm hoping to get about 500 gallons per minute off the truck while supplying that. So a total of 700. We will run our discharge, our master discharge. We'll run it at 175 to start off. We'll see what our intake is like, and we'll go from there. We will have to bleed our master intake. Again, it's really no different than anything else. The pump doesn't like air. So we'll bleed our master intake. Once the air is bled out of it, we will open the master intake. And from that point, we can close our tank to pump, and then we can open our tank fill and start refilling our tank. If we run out of water, we're done. You need water for it to work. The biggest one is probably the ladder truck. You know, you may have to figure out how much hose you have stretched out that you have to supply at 175 psi to determine if you have enough to fill the hose and get water back to the truck. If you don't, you'll never pull a draft off of it. Our intake, we'll see what we get, but I think we're going to try to get it pretty soft and squishy on our hose. We'll try to get it right close to 0, 5 pounds, and then we'll see what what flow rating we get. This is basically for water sources that are too far away to draft from with hard suction. Down at the ball fields would be one where we can sit on the road. You can run it out a couple 100 feet. I don't know. Use your imagination. The turbo draft's going to be located on the tanker. It's going to be on the driver's side first compartment, right above the couplings. Doesn't mean it has to stay on the tanker. If you're taking 33 or 39 to a water supply, pull it off and take it with you. However, it's going to be stored on the tanker for now. Directly on the turbo draft, Levicus hooked us up with some sweet decals that show supply at 175 psi. So when you pull it out, if you can't remember, it's labeled right there at the 2.5 connection. Set your pump pressure to that and then work off of it. Okay, we're at a pretty familiar site here. Alright, here's our dry hydrant, Holden Road. Very grassy area with sod on top. I'm going to go and say probably more than, but 60% of the time we cannot access this through that driveway without sinking. So let's look at a couple possibilities here. Once they stretch this hose out, we'll figure how far away from this pond we are. Looks like we're going to be right near 100 feet, maybe a hair more. I don't know if you can see the embankment that well on the camera, but we probably have close to a 20-foot elevation change up to the road. So our pool is going to be 100 feet with a 20-foot elevation change. Our hope is to be able to supply water to incoming tankers, or maybe there is a fire nearby that we're supplying our own engines with this. And just imagine, it doesn't have to be at a dry hydrant, just because we're there. We just know we can't access this very often. This can be a creek, this can be a pond, this could be somebody's swimming pool. But without getting our truck close enough to the water source, this will be a solution. A couple other different ways we can look at this is if you take a smaller truck, you need about a 500 GPM pump minimum. That's what's required, because you need about 200 gallons per minute supplying your 2.5, and then you'll have the 5-inch coming back to the truck, and then you want to supply a discharge to incoming tankers or to a supply engine. So you need a decent pump. However, say you take Bloomfield's truck, their mini pumper, and you can back it in here and hook it to that dry hydrant enough to supply our 2.5 to the pond, and we can run our 5-inch supply to incoming tankers. If that makes sense to you, now instead of getting 500 GPM out of our 5-inch and an additional 200 going out our 2.5, all we're doing is supplying the 2.5 at 200 GPM, and then the tankers are going to receive the full, whatever they can pump there, whether it be 500, 600. There's 100,000 ways you can set this up. Here's another scenario. Say we have 300 feet, which we're not going to try today. If we needed it, we could try it. 300 feet of line stretched to a pond from a roadway or whatnot. We could then set a portable pond up and use our 5-inch stork spout. And we can run a draft to that pond. Now, if you're following me, what you can do is you can supply your 5-inch, which is going into your portable pond. So while tankers are not here, you can be filling up your water in your portable pond, you know, whatever size that is, 2,000, you know, 3,500 gallons. While you do that, you pull a draft from your portable pond, and then when the tanker shows up, you now have 3,500 gallons on the ground you can pull from, and you won't be limited by the amount of supply from our Turbodraft. It'll be just like drafting out of a portable pond. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of ways to set this up. You know, Bloomfield is a place with Canadota Lake. We have a lot of houses down there with no water supplies available, but there's water surrounding it. You know, you got the north inlet there, water going down both sides. You got the lake itself, but a lot of times with the beachgoers, with cars parked in the way, stuff like that, we're not able to access the water, and a lot of it is grassy areas that we're dealing with when we pull up. So this does take a little time to set up. However, this truck is not in service yet, and it does not have any hose. In reality, we would pull our, you know, 2.5 discharge or cross lay, and we can pull our 5-inch right off the rear and run this a lot quicker than hooking every individual hose up and stretching it out. So we'll give you the view here. They're hooking up their 2.5 and 5-inch. Remember, there's no fire at water supply, so we don't need fire gear on, do we, Kayla?
I say you're wearing fire pants right now.
Well, I'm wearing my extrication pants. I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't realize you were wearing fire gear. I'll clip that out of the video. You probably are going to have fire gear on because that's what you showed up in, but, you know, take your coat and stuff off. We're dealing with water.
That's why I don't have my coat on.
No, that's fine. You know, you get to a water's edge, you know, something a lot deeper even, you're going to want your coat off. So there's a couple different things we can do, Nick.
Why don't you take it out on that dock?
You can take it off the dock. You're right. That looks like a soft silty bottom, so we're going to do screen up. The other option is you can lay down, say, a roof ladder into the water, or attach that onto a ladder, and then you slide your whole ladder in, which is going to give you a means to pull it out. You know, a lot of ways to set this up. It's which way do you want to use. The biggest thing is setting it up and using it. You get your water supply, you can figure out how to tear it down when you're all done. Nick decided to not go with the plan of using a ladder, so he's manhandling it. Does it screen up?
Yep.
Okay.
That's good.
So it's in there pretty good. I think it'll work. We may have an issue with pulling some air. We'll figure that out, and maybe we'll find something to float over top. We are getting a float for the truck. It should be here soon. Yeah. So it is heavy. It sucks to haul around that thing. My first impression of it when the truck came was get that thing off the truck. We'll never use it. I thought it was just a hook to hard suction and do kind of, you know, no different than a jet siphon. When I looked into it, I changed my mind. It's a pretty cool tool. I took this right out of the owner's manual. Goes over the setup and operation. I'll read it with you. Place the engine into pump gear and prepare for pumping. Intake valve should be closed, or on other trucks, piston intake valve. Open the air bleeder on the suction intake. Allow any air to be vented. Open the tank to pump. Increase engine pressure to 175. Open the 2.5 discharge, supplying the turbo draft, and maintain 175 psi. That's required to start the suction back to the truck. As the 2.5 lines charge, the 5-inch will immediately start to fill. Close the bleeder once water reaches it. Slowly open suction intake, and the water supply is established. Again, refill your tank at this point, and you can close that tank fill and recirculate right through the Turbodraft. Alright, so we'll go off, I'm going to shut that door so I don't hear that radio for now. We're going to go off the startup process. Our sensor's out. This is something we want to run on our pressure mode or PSI mode. That way when we set to 175 for our discharge line, when we open or close discharges, we remain at 175. So when you're running this, run off of PSI mode to keep that high discharge pressure on that 2.5 line. We're not in pump gear yet, but once we are, we're going to go tank to pump. We can get our pressure build up, and we'll open our discharge line. Set it at 175, we're going to try that. If that doesn't work, then we'll do our friction loss calculations and then do it from there. Charge at 175. We leave our master intake closed. We're going to bleed the air out when our 5-inch fills with water. Once we bleed the air out, then we can open our master intake valve. These are going to be rebuilt. They're very stiff, they're hard to open. Those will get redone when the truck goes out for service. Once that's done, we can open this. Once we're flowing water, we can close our tank to pump, and we do not need to circulate water. We're going to be circulating through our 2.5 back into our 5-inch through the pump. So we no longer need to pull our tank to pump. However, we are going to pull our tank fill and refill our water. Again, these are 750 gallons each. So we may not even come off the full mark. I doubt we'll come off the full mark, or if we do, that's the very top, and it's showing we have just below full. With the ladder, we might run down into half or a quarter by the time we fill our 2.5. So the first thing we're going to want to do is refill our tank, because if we run out of water, we can no longer supply this system. So, ready to rock and roll. Alright, we're in pump gear. Tank the pump. Again, we're going to run an RPM mode. We'll get up to 175 PSI. That escalated quickly. If something happens while running the Turbodraft, whether the supply stops, the pump cavitates on the hose, just open your tank to pump. This is out of the owner's manual. The supply line flow is exceeded and the line collapses. Open the tank to pump valve, decrease discharge flow until the supply line recovers. Once stabilized, close the tank to pump, top off the tank as soon as possible. So if you're flowing too much to those incoming tankers, you may run into trouble where you cavitate that hose. Open your tank to pump, it'll resupply that discharge to the Turbodraft, reconnect the supply, back down that discharge that you're filling tankers with, and then refill your tank. Keep it right going. That's the end. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the Zoom meeting.